Behind the peaceful facade of Taipei City lies a tragic story of disappearance and crime, and to this day, many questions remain unanswered. The story takes us back to June 2000, to a quiet alley in the Dan district of Taipei, where Zhang Jinghua lived in her apartment, which also served as her English tutoring classroom. After earning her master's degree in England and returning to Taiwan, Ms. Zhang decided to start a small business from home with an English language school. Her classes were well loved by many students thanks to her approachable and easy-to-understand teaching style. Beyond her steady income from teaching, Ms. Zhang was also quite savvy with investments and financial management. She was an independent, successful woman and the ideal model of a golden girl in modern society. Living alone in a private apartment in the expensive Dan district of Taipei, Ms. Zhang enjoyed a comfortable and fulfilling life. With an independent lifestyle and love for safety, she was very focused on protecting herself. She was passionate about traveling abroad and always carefully prepared every detail for each trip. She was especially close to her family and always notified them in advance whenever she traveled, so they could rest easy. On June 14, 2000, after Ms. Zhang's unofficial boyfriend left her home early in the morning, everything seemed normal. However, by noon, her family and friends couldn't reach her, which began to worry them. When her family arrived at her apartment, they saw her shoes still neatly arranged on the rack, but when they rang the doorbell repeatedly with no answer, their anxiety grew. By late evening on the 15th, their concern intensified as they still couldn't contact her, and there was no sign that she had returned home. Unable to wait any longer, the family decided to call the fire department for help, asking them to use a ladder to climb into the house through the window. However, even after getting inside, they couldn't find Miss Zhang anywhere. More worryingly, her cell phone was also missing, with absolutely no signs indicating that she had voluntarily left. The situation became increasingly serious, leaving her family more confused and fearful for her safety. Upon receiving the report, police immediately arrived at the scene to investigate. They began by checking the front door lock, and the first thing that caught their attention was that the lock was not damaged at all. All signs indicated there was no external interference, suggesting that there had been no break-in or attack from outside. Proceeding inside, police continued to examine the living room. There, they noticed everything was very neat and orderly, with no signs of disturbance. Nothing was broken or improperly cleaned. This further confirmed that no robbery had occurred at the scene, at least not in this area. Police continued to check the other rooms in the apartment. Upon entering Ms. Zhang's bedroom, they found several sets of clothes neatly folded on the bed, but nothing was disturbed or missing. Everything still looked perfectly normal, unlike a break-in or theft. However, the floor had been cleaned too thoroughly to a degree unusual for a normal home. The floor was shining bright, without a speck of dust or any traces, which surprised the police. Of course, this could have been due to Miss Zhang's living habits, or perhaps she had cleaned thoroughly before leaving home. However, when questioned, Ms. Zhang's family revealed that she never hired cleaning help, which made the police suspicious. Why would someone living alone like Ms. Zhang be able to keep her home this perfectly clean, especially given that she didn't have the habit of hiring help? As the investigators prepared to enter the bathroom, they suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the balcony. Looking out, they saw a husky running around in circles. As soon as the balcony door was opened, the dog immediately rushed out, then ran into the room and began making strange sounds. However, from the dog's behavior, police noticed its agitation wasn't a sign of an attack, but rather seemed like it was worried or frightened by something. With a gut feeling that something unusual was happening, the investigators decided to carefully examine every detail in the bathroom. They checked each tile, each personal hygiene item, and discovered that all necessary items were present. However, one strange thing was that the bathroom was missing 2 bath towels and a large bottle of shower gel. These were items typically present in any normal bathroom, and their absence raised more suspicion about what had actually happened there. Even more surprising was the presence of an electric fan in the bathroom. Normally, we wouldn't place a fan in a bathroom, as specialized electrical equipment would be used instead, because using electrical devices in a damp environment like a bathroom is very dangerous. Moreover, Using a fan to dry the air while bathing could easily cause a cold, which made the investigators even more suspicious. The police found it increasingly strange that this fan was in the bathroom, a detail they had never encountered at similar crime scenes. Next to the dark red bathtub near the wall, there were uneven stains, very different from normal watermarks. This caught the investigators' attention, because if it were a woman bathing, water could splash onto the wall, but it couldn't splash onto this position, the side of the wall. Sensing that something was wrong, the investigators decided to use luminol, a special chemical to detect traces of blood. And the result was shocking. The luminol reaction illuminated bloodstains on the floor. One investigator wondered, could Miss Zhang have been preparing fish, chicken, or duck in the bathroom? But clearly this wasn't an ordinary stain, but rather a very suspicious, abnormal sign. To observe more closely, the investigators used different light sources, illuminating the bathroom from various angles. At this point, bloodstains began to appear clearly on the bathtub. Looking deeper inside, they discovered the bathtub full of blood, which had overflowed and dripped onto the floor. The blood drops from the bathtub continued to flow down to the toilet base. Because the toilet was dark red in color, a large patch of blood was very difficult to see with the naked eye. However, with the help of luminol and light from different angles, the investigators realized this was a very large and clear blood trace. Not only that, at the sink, police discovered more blood stains. The bathtub, toilet, and sink all had blood traces, and the floor was also scattered with small blood spots. When investigators continued to use luminol, strangely, the entire wall in the bathroom also turned green. This could be explained by blood getting on a cleaning cloth, which was then used to wipe the walls, creating such large blood streaks. This further reinforced the suspicion that the scene had been deliberately cleaned to conceal evidence. The investigators, with meticulous care, carefully marked each spot with blood and recorded all the details. After compiling, they created a diagram of the blood distribution at the scene, and a total of 107 blood spots were discovered. Blood samples were then taken from Ms. Zhang's parents for testing. The forensic results showed it was Miss Zhang's blood. All of these signs led to an undeniable conclusion. Something horrific had happened in this very bathroom. On the bathroom floor, there was an electric fan, an item not typically found in bathrooms. This led the task force to suspect that the perpetrator may have used the electric fan to dry the floor after cleaning up the crime scene. Additionally, the victim's family reported that a shower curtain had also disappeared. The question arose, had the perpetrator used this shower curtain to wrap Ms. Zhang's body in order to conceal evidence and hide what had happened? However, all of these suspicions were still just speculation, without concrete proof. Because aside from the obvious bloodstains, the task force found no other traces, such as bones, tissue fragments, or human body matter in the bathroom. The only thing they could be certain of at this point was that Miss Zhang's disappearance was far from simple. The ominous signs, the absence of a body, and the strange items at the scene made the investigators feel that this case was definitely connected to a serious criminal act, not just an ordinary missing person case. If Ms. Zhang disappeared so mysteriously, then the perpetrator was very likely someone she knew, because when police entered the house, they noticed everything was neat and orderly, as if it had been deliberately cleaned up. The cleanliness and order in the home made them suspect that someone close to her had tampered with the crime scene. So, who was this acquaintance? Could it have been Miss Zhang's boyfriend? Ms. Zhang had a boyfriend she had known for a long time, and initially, this was a possibility that police considered. However, after conducting a thorough investigation, police ruled out his involvement in the case. Ms. Zhang enjoyed socializing with friends, was well-educated, had a refined demeanor, and dressed fashionably. Although she had a boyfriend, since they weren't married, she still attracted many suitors. To clarify the relationship surrounding Ms. Zhang, police invited all the men and women who had been in contact with her recently to come in for questioning. When checking Ms. Zhang's call log, they discovered that the last person to contact her before she disappeared was a man named Li Zhengwei. Police contacted this man and asked him to come to the police station to clarify the matter. Although an appointment had been scheduled, he repeatedly failed to show up. One investigator stated that in principle, Mr. Lee always cooperated when requested, but every time police arranged an appointment, he cited being busy as an excuse. Police scheduled meetings with him twice, but neither was successful. When asked to come in on a specific day, he told police he would come the following day. However, when the next day arrived, he said he had overslept and couldn't make it. By noon, police sensed something was wrong and decided to investigate further. After checking, they discovered that Mr. Lee had left Taiwan and flown to Hong Kong early that same morning without notifying the police. His hasty departure made police even more suspicious about his connection to Ms. Zhang's disappearance. Mr. Lee's sudden flight made police extremely suspicious. How could it be explained that at the airport he still told police he had overslept? This was completely unreasonable and contradicted what he had said earlier. This man's quick escape made police feel they couldn't easily rule him out of the case. However, since they didn't have concrete evidence yet, they decided not to rush to conclusions, but to continue investigating. Police began investigating Ms. Zhang's assets and cash flow. In her master bedroom, they discovered a drawer that had been opened. Inside were some savings account books, but strangely, not all of them had been taken. Nevertheless, they noticed that cash amounting to 70,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately 2,270 US dollars, and some foreign currency had disappeared. What was suspicious was that Ms. Zhang's credit cards remained untouched in the drawer. If this was an ordinary robbery, why would the perpetrator only take cash and not touch the credit cards? This action was completely illogical and didn't match the behavior of a typical robber. In addition, police discovered Ms. Zhang's wallet sitting neatly on the table, with her bank card and some loose change still inside. If this was truly a robbery, why would the perpetrator overlook these valuable items? The fact that the wallet was left untouched made the case even stranger, because typically in robberies, criminals won't pass up easily accessible assets. All of these abnormalities pointed in only one direction. This was not an ordinary robbery, but very likely a homicide staged to cover up the evidence. Police continued to expand the scope of their investigation and decided to check security cameras in the surrounding area. Through this, they discovered that around 11 p.m. on June 14th, a white car appeared near Ms. Zhang's apartment. After closer examination, police confirmed this car belonged to Li Zhengwei. When they continued monitoring, they found the car had been parked near the apartment for quite a long time before leaving around 2 a.m. This further increased suspicion about his connection to Miss Zhang's disappearance. The fact that his car appeared at the scene for an extended period without a clear reason made police even more convinced that Li played an important role in this case. Police decided to obtain a warrant to search Li Zhengwei's car. When his sister drove the car over, police conducted a careful search in the presence of a prosecutor, and the entire process was recorded on video. The results were shocking. Inside the car, especially in the trunk area and back seat, police discovered numerous bloodstains, although they had been carefully wiped clean. To verify, they used luminol, and the hidden bloodstains appeared clearly under the light. Blood samples were collected and DNA tested, and the results showed that these bloodstains matched Ms. Zhang's blood. Not only that, police also found some hair strands and fabric remnants in the car. After conducting forensic analysis, they discovered that these hair strands belonged to Ms. Zhang, and the fabric piece found in the car matched the missing shower curtain from her apartment. All of this evidence further confirmed police suspicions. Li Zhengwei was the perpetrator. Every trace, from blood to hair to fabric, pointed directly at him, making the case clearer than ever. With sufficient evidence in hand, police issued an international warrant for Li Zhengwei. After a period on the run, he was finally arrested in Hong Kong and extradited back to Taiwan to face justice. During interrogation, despite clear evidence, Li stubbornly denied guilt and refused to admit that he had killed Ms. Zhang. According to police investigation, Li and Ms. Zhang knew each other through a mutual friend. Initially, they were simply friends, but gradually Li began to develop romantic feelings for Ms. Zhang. However, Ms. Zhang already had a boyfriend and had no intention of pursuing a romantic relationship with him. This made Li feel angry, leading to deep disappointment. These negative emotions seem to have driven him to extreme actions, ultimately creating a heartbreaking tragedy. Furthermore, Lee knew that Ms. Zhang was financially stable while he was experiencing money troubles. He had borrowed money from her multiple times but never paid it back. Ms. Zhang had reminded him about this debt, but Lee had no intention of repaying it. Police believe that Lee's motive may have stemmed from anger over his rejected feelings, combined with increasing financial pressure, which led him to develop the intent to kill Ms. Zhang. Based on the evidence collected, police reconstructed the entire sequence of events. On the night of June 14, 2000, after Ms. Zhang's boyfriend left in the morning, Lee came to her apartment around 11 p.m. Because he was an acquaintance, Ms. Zhang opened the door and invited him in. During their conversation, the two may have argued about money or romantic matters, which caused the atmosphere to become tense. In a fit of rage, Lee killed Ms. Zhang right there in the bathroom. After committing the crime, Lee carefully cleaned up the scene, wiped away the bloodstains, and rearranged the items in the apartment to create a tidy appearance. He even used the electric fan to dry the floor after cleaning, seemingly to conceal any traces that might arouse police suspicion. After completing the cleanup, Lee used the shower curtain to wrap Ms. Zhang's body, then carried it down to his car and drove it to another location to dispose of the body, attempting to erase all traces. Before leaving, to make it look like a robbery, Lee took some cash from the house both to disguise his true purpose and to obtain spending money. However, despite being very careful in cleaning up the scene, Lee couldn't completely erase all the blood traces. The hidden bloodstains, along with evidence in the car such as blood, hair, and fabric, became the evidence that incriminated him. The biggest problem in this case was that Ms. Zhang's body had still not been found. Police conducted extensive searches, from coastal areas to the mountains surrounding Taipei, places where Lee might have gone that night based on the car's travel history. However, despite relentless search efforts, the results remained fruitless. Ms. Zhang's body became a strange question mark in the case, making all the surrounding information even more obscure and difficult to understand. During the investigation, some strange events occurred that sent chills down the investigators' spines. One of the investigators, Kai Chun-hui, recounted his experience. After completing the crime scene examination at Ms. Zhang's apartment, the investigation team decided to organize a small memorial ceremony there, hoping that Ms. Zhang's spirit might still be present and could help them uncover the truth. When preparing to film the memorial ceremony, a strange incident occurred. Kai Chun-hui's video camera suddenly stopped working despite his attempts to fix it. He thought the battery might be dead, so he replaced it with a new one, but the situation didn't improve. His colleague even ran out to buy new batteries, but the camera still completely refused to work. What was strange was that when he handed the camera to his colleague and asked him to film outside the apartment, it worked normally. He took the camera back and tried again, but there was still no response. Both cameras they had brought to the scene encountered the same malfunction and couldn't operate at this location. Clearly, before coming, they had checked everything thoroughly, and everything was working fine. So why couldn't the cameras function in Miss Zhang's apartment? Unable to explain it, they decided to borrow another camera from the precinct to try. However, the result remained the same. As soon as the camera was placed inside the apartment, it wouldn't work, but when taken outside, it functioned normally. This was a phenomenon they had never encountered in any investigation, and the police officers, prosecutors, and judges all witnessed this strangeness. Everyone felt confused and didn't dare say anything more. No one could explain this inexplicable phenomenon. Afterward, Kai Chun-hui whispered to his colleagues, "If you can, please come find me, and we will help you find justice so you can rest in peace." Strangely, that night, he had a very unusual dream. He recounted, "There was a woman about 5 feet 1 inch tall who grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. I didn't turn around, just kept following her. Although I couldn't see her face, I could sense the deep sadness in her eyes. We walked toward the sea, through a rice field, then continued on a village road. After walking for a while, an old man stopped me and said, 'Don't go any further.' And then I woke up." Recalling the dream, Kai Chun-hui felt that the image of the woman in his dream closely resembled Ms. Zhang, both petite, with shoulder-length hair. He immediately told his team leader about the dream. After hearing it, the team leader said, "I believe you." He immediately called the prosecutor and seriously reported the matter. Last night, Zhang Jinghua appeared in his dream. She's buried in a place with mountains, the sea, and a road in between. This strange dream seemed like an inexplicable sign, yet it coincided with information that police hadn't yet found. Kai Chun-hui's feeling about the woman in his dream made the case even more mysterious and unbelievable. To recreate the situation at that time, Kai Chun-hui and his colleague drove to Jinshan. The coastal scenery seemed to bear some resemblance to the location he had dreamed about, but it wasn't exactly the same as in his dream. They continued driving, searching further, hoping to find new clues. After traveling a distance, they suddenly spotted a roadside earth god shrine. They decided to stop and perform a prayer ceremony, hoping to receive help. Upon seeing the shrine, Kai Chun-hui said, "The moment I saw it, I immediately knew that was the old man from my dream who had stopped me." At that moment, I truly got chills. This powerful feeling made him unable to deny the strangeness and coincidence of his dream. This shrine had been rebuilt, but previously, according to local residents, it had once had 3 statues. Currently, only a single statue remained, creating a mysterious scene and making him feel even more that this was the place where Ms. Zhang might have been buried. Police then sought out a feng shui master to examine the area, hoping to receive guidance about Ms. Zhang's burial location. However, they also didn't overlook scientific methods to shorten the search time. They contacted a ground-penetrating radar expert, but due to the complex terrain with many rock formations and high humidity, the use of ground-penetrating radar couldn't achieve the expected effectiveness. Therefore, they decided not to continue using this method. Here's the translation in standard American English. Police also considered using search dogs, but at that time there were no cadaver dogs in the country, forcing them to contact a famous dog training facility in Japan. However, this facility declined, stating that the scene didn't have any specific points where search dogs could be used, and if the body was buried deep underground, the search would be very difficult. In that situation, police had no choice but to dig spot by spot, hoping to find Ms. Zhang's body. Unfortunately, despite digging across the hillside for many days, they still didn't find any information about the body's location. Their relentless efforts had reached a dead end, making the case even more obscure and difficult to resolve. Finally, based on the abnormal blood distribution in the bathroom, the pattern of blood droplets in the car, as well as Ms. Zhang's activity records for over 2 years afterward, the court issued a comprehensive verdict. This evidence showed that Ms. Zhang had completely disappeared, leaving no trace of life. She had no records of any social activity, no spending records, no travel records, no ATM withdrawal records, no contact with anyone, no appearance in any photographs, and no immigration records for an extended period. These absences further confirmed that Ms. Zhang had completely disappeared without leaving any trace. The court recognized that her disappearance was not a temporary event, but a tragic conclusion. Therefore, the court ultimately ruled that Ms. Zhang was dead, although her body had still not been found. This decision officially closed part of the case, though questions about the reasons and details surrounding her death remained unanswered. The police officers, prosecutors, and even the judges involved in this case all experienced inexplicable and strange phenomena. One of the first incidents involved the car parked in the parking lot. Specifically, the trunk opened automatically without anyone touching it, leaving investigators confused and questioning this strangeness. The prosecutor in charge of the case also continuously received strange phone calls at midnight. When he answered, the phone only emitted the sobbing of a girl, but no one spoke. These events added to the mystery of the case. Another inexplicable phenomenon involved Zhui Bei Wen, the district police officer in charge of the case, who also had a special experience. That evening, after sealing off the crime scene, he looked inside the house and then went home. In his dream, he found himself on a ship in the open sea. A soaking wet girl crawled toward him, grabbed his hand, and begged for help. He asked her what was wrong, and the scene shifted to the living room of a house. The girl said she was in great pain and asked for his help. In the dream, he saw a lot of blood on the walls, and then he woke up. The next day, he shared with his colleagues that he had a very frightening dream, and he had never dreamed of anything so strange before. When he went to the office to get something, he was suddenly shocked to see the photo of the missing woman. He immediately recognized that the girl in his dream was the person in the photo. "This is the woman who grabbed my hand in the dream. Why is she in this photo?" He was extremely shocked. Upon asking, he learned that the missing woman was Miss Zhang, whose home crime scene he had visited the evening before. Could this be a coincidence? At the trial, the judge asked Kai Chun-hui, "Is Ms. Zhang still alive?" He replied, "I don't know." The judge continued asking, "Was there a murder?" He still firmly answered, "I don't know." However, Kai Chun-hui knew that the judge was seeking a definite answer from him, a decisive answer about the case's outcome. Nevertheless, as a scientific investigator, he could only state what he had clear evidence for and couldn't draw conclusions without sufficient basis. The final piece of this case puzzle couldn't come from scientific evidence, but had to rely on the judge's conscience to complete. The court had to accept that although Ms. Zhang's body wasn't found and suspect Li didn't confess, circumstantial evidence could still create a clear conclusion. Li was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment at the first trial. However, he persistently denied guilt. "I didn't kill her." At the appeal trial, he became even more arrogant and accused the police of framing him. He said that when police searched the car, they required him to turn away. After they had rummaged through everything, only then did they call him back. He continued to argue. So did the police violate procedures or not? How could they bring a bunch of blood there? Although Li's accusations didn't convince the court, they were evidence of his doubt and arrogance as he tried to deny all the truth. Furthermore, the car, where important blood traces were found, was actually brought to police for inspection by Li's own sister. Not only was there consent from his relative, but the entire search process was fully recorded on video, with the prosecutor witnessing and closely supervising according to proper procedures. Therefore, Li's accusation that police framed him had absolutely no basis. However, at trial, Li showed no remorse whatsoever. On the contrary, he even shouted loudly, displayed an arrogant attitude and lack of cooperation, which outraged public opinion. The initial sentence was life imprisonment, but it was once converted to the death penalty due to his contemptuous attitude toward the law and the brutal nature of the case. However, at the final appeal stage, the Supreme Court decided to maintain the life sentence, reasoning that Li voluntarily returned to Taiwan to cooperate with the investigation rather than fleeing to the end. In addition, the court ordered Li to compensate the victim's family more than 2.57 million new Taiwan dollars, approximately 83,500 US dollars, including 1.3 million to the victim's mother and 1.2 million to the victim's father. However, everyone understands that, although Li Jungwei had to pay the price before the law, no matter how large the compensation, it could never make up for the pain the family must carry for the rest of their lives. A life lost, a family shattered, that's a price that can never be fully paid. Justice isn't only found in the verdict given to the perpetrator, but also in returning the truth, returning the voice, and returning the final piece to the victim. Until her body is found, this story hasn't truly closed. And perhaps, only when that secret is revealed will the darkness leave this case that has haunted so many people for so many years, and that's today's case. What are your thoughts on this case? Please share in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.